How's
Bye.
everybody doing?
Good, good.
Good. Great.
Can I run something by you all really quickly before we get
Yeah.
started?
Sure.
So I was thinking today for the meditation, I assembled that poem and I was thinking of like reading it during the meditation. Is that okay with you all?
Absolutely.
If I
Which
do
poem?
that? A poem
When-
for this week.
Oh yeah. Speaking of poems, are we going to play Helen Harrison reading her poem? Dave edited
Yes.
that. Yeah. Do I need to do anything? Do you guys have it?
Nope.
Okay.
We have it. I have it in my bar. So I'll just share the screen after Emily, you stop sharing yours, and then
Okay.
we'll just go right into Helen's. I'll share my screen and we'll
Can I share the
it up.
PDF? Because the thing about the PDFs, they're great, but the screen share does get a little more complicated than when we're doing Kindle. So can I show you what I have and you guys tell me if you think it's like looks okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Because some people, I think it depends on how the people have their view set up in their Zoom. So they might have it set up so that the text is really small, where someone else might have it set up perfectly, you know? Does this look like normal to you guys?
It
Yeah.
looks good to me.
Looks good to
Okay.
me. Looks good to me too.
Okay, awesome.
Because from that text, are we looking at that text? We're only looking at one part of that text, right? Because
Which we're listening to.
we're listening to that, right? Really, the text that we're looking at is the
Oh, the
other
better.
text.
Okay, let me get that. So what's the title of that one, Izzy?
Life is a force. Growing.
Right. There's two from the Harrison's book. Right, right. Thank you.
I am happy to also email that to you right now because I have it right here. Just so
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that just to make sure I have the
okay.
proper.
To okay, life is a force. Force.
Beverly gave me this today. Do you guys ever seen this? It's a magnetic needle holder.
Whoa.
Whoa.
I've never seen that.
It's magnetic needle keeper, so you keep your needles and they won't fall out.
That's nice.
I'll send you a picture of it because it's a deal changer.
Wow.
Because
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
always
I've
dropping
lost.
my needles.
I'm always afraid I'm
Yeah.
gonna like forget them somewhere and then someone will step on it or something.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to stab myself every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry, it was right in front of my face and I couldn't see it.
Problem.
Send it to you.
Email just has a way of like eating itself or something.
I know.
Sometimes I'm like, where is that thing?
I know. I flag everything to the point where everything's flagged, and then I'm like, okay, that defeats the purpose.
Okay, now the other one.
Like when you're annotating and you're like, I'm gonna highlight the important parts, and then your whole
Right.
page is like highlighter. It's like, okay.
I know. Mango it. This one.
Yeah, that looks great. The font
That's
is
good to me too.
fairly good sized, I think.
Okay,
I
yeah.
agree.
I felt so bad last time because Olan, I think, really wanted to read, but she was having trouble seeing the text. But I think it was because of the view settings on each individual's view settings can be different, you know.
I think also it's probably gonna be better this week because these weren't scanned and then like turned back.
Right.
They're just already raw PDFs or whatever. So
That's right. That's right.
quality's probably gonna be better.
Cool.
Yay, 5:30.
Friday ritual.
Okay, we'll let everyone in now.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. While we're waiting for people to sign in, we're going to begin with something we started a couple weeks ago that is my favorite thing to do, and it is to feature the embroidery of the week. And this week we have, this beautiful embroidery. It's a Western Willa peony, and it was done by Martha. And what was really captured my eye, besides how beautiful the intricate work is, I don't know if you can see how the detail. But she included a lovely note, which always makes me happy. And what she said is that she tried to stain the white napkin with turmeric tea, so it's got kind of a coloration to it that I think is really beautiful and brings out the background. So, again, while we're waiting for people to sign on, we'll start with like informal interviews. Informal introductions. I'm Jen. I'm calling in from Studio City, and I use she, her pronouns. And tonight, I will be working on this bird embroidery, which that's about as far as I got from last week. So I'm hoping to get a little further tonight. And I will pass it on to Olan.
Hello, calling in from the West Hollywood adjacent area. I use she, her pronouns. I'm working on this. I think I might finish it tonight. This thing of a million stitches, and then I will move on to a bird, and I will send it over to Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm calling in from West Covina. And I'm also working on the same sunflower that Olan's working on. And I will pass it on to Newton. Or maybe he's not with us yet. I'll pass it on to Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from Paya Hunadu, or so called Owens Valley. I'm working on a common raven, which I've stained with tea, and I will pass it on to Walker.
You're muted. Walker, you're muted.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I just got on. I didn't see that. I was saying that I was thinking about tea staining the whole thing of mine. So it's very curious that, Lauren, you dropped some tea on yours already. But I'm doing a raven. And trying to see who else is there. Aaron? No.
Hello,
Hey, Aaron.
I am calling from Metabolic Studio, Los Angeles, California. I will be working on, I refer to myself as, and I will be working on the roof on a cymatic dish, trying to clean some of the elements out of it. I pass it on to Michelle.
There you go. Hey, I'm Michel. I'm calling from Highland Park, California. And I will be working on sketching tonight while I'm listening to the wonderful topics. And I haven't been in for a while and I regret I wasn't available, but I really enjoy being back. back here. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Emily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Emily, calling in from Lincoln Heights, just a couple blocks from the LA River, just a couple blocks from Metabolic Studio. And I am she, her pronouns, and happy to be with you tonight. And I'm going to be helping out with facilitating the reading and the screen share. So I'm very excited. And I wonder if I could pass it to Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne, she, her, and I think I'm going to be cooking. Yeah. I promised a cake to my father. So. All right. Let's see, I came in a little bit late. I don't know who shared or who hasn't.
I'll go, Roxy. It's Millie.
Thanks, Millie.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's Millie. I'm calling from Glassell Park. I'm currently organizing seed in order to plant this spring. I will pass it on to Sheila.
Hi, I'm calling from Highland Park, and you know, this is my very first experience with this group. And so I guess what I'll be working on is, there was a theater that was owned by the Pechanga tribe, and it burned down. So a bunch of us are volunteering to help rebuild it, and I'm the one who's doing the decorative clay tiles. So that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. So I can pass it on to who else hasn't gone.
Take it. Hi, I'm Alex, calling in from Mar Vista, California, and I am going to be working on something that we worked before. This is some plant life of mallow. It's just taking me a long time, but we'll see how far I get. And I'm going to pass it on to Rowena.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rowena, calling in from Los Angeles, Tongva land. I use she, her pronouns. And tonight I'm working on this lovely native bee. Very nice to see everyone. I will pass it to Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm calling in from Santa Monica. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm trying to get my embroidery together for tonight. And I'm going to pass it to, I just came in, hopefully I have it right. Cascade, have you gone?
Hello, I'm Cascade. I'm in Los Angeles, she, her pronouns. I am just putting together for the first time this gorgeous common raven. I'm really pumped about this. Big Crow fan. Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm sorry. What? Hi, Friday. No. My good.
Nope, no worries. I'm actually going to take it right now, and we'll begin. And for those of you that didn't get to introduce yourself, there'll be an opportunity at the end where we will show more of the work that we're working on during this Zoom. The Metabolic Studios Learning and Mending series is now in its third evolution. This time around, we're addressing suffocation. Growing through the last two gatherings, the first learning syllabus in response to the ongoing racial violence, particularly at the hands of police, and the second holding space for the megafires that have consumed the West. And now, with the advent of COVID-19, we feel it's imperative to address the larger reality of suffocation and the need for us to revive our breath. In order to get a deeper understanding of these crises and how they are interconnected, we're building upon the readings in the last two series. abolitionist writings by Black women, and Native American perspectives of land stewardship. Since the ongoing pandemic began, we have moved our weekly public studio practice to Zoom, where we have committed ourselves to learning and mending together. We invite you to receive these readings as a deep inhale, and we find that crafting together helps to receive these readings as meditation. Many of you have received embroidery kits from us of native plants representing the food and medicine Metabolic Studio is cultivating. In addition to those, we're happy to include a new pattern based on biosinosis, which is an association of diverse organisms forming a closely integrated community. So these are the, two, as well as some of you have mentioned this evening, birds. If you would like to receive an embroidery kit, please send your name and mailing address to info@metabolicstudio.org, and we will send one out to you shortly. We've decided to close the entrance to the Zoom space after the first 15 minutes of the reading to protect the flow and to keep a steady breath. These gatherings are being recorded through Zoom for archival purposes. We thank you for co-creating this opportunity to learn and mend together during quarantine. Tonight we'll read Paul Mankiewicz and Dorian Sagan, Life is a Force, Growing Home, reflecting on the Harrisons' force majeure work. And also listening to the reading of Helen Harrison's Reflecting on the Laws of Conservation of Energy and Exploitation in Ecosystems. We will share our screen, and we encourage you to read a section of the text aloud with us. When there is a pause in the reading, feel free to unmute yourself and begin where the last person left off. Silence is golden, and there's no pressure to fill the transitional spaces while we enjoy a breath and continue crafting. Feel free to jump in and continue reading at your comfort level. You don't have to read, it's also fine to enjoy listening. And now I will pass it over to Izzy, where we'll do some breath work before the reading.
Thank you, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Izzy, and my pronouns are she, they. So before we begin with breath work, I'll invite some energy movement into our body. So if you could inhale and stretch your arms out to a T. Exhale, lean to the right, stretching your fingers out as far as they can comfortably reach. Exhale. Inhale. Come back to center, spread wide across the chest, maybe across the mouth too, into a smile. And then exhale, reach to the left. Inhale, back to center. Exhale. And then let's inhale. And we can bring the palms up. I don't know if you can really see my hands. Sorry, I'm just showing you that my palms are up. Inhale, lift the palms up and bring your arms up near your ears, stretch the fingertips, maybe wiggle the fingers. Exhale, release. Wonderful. Now let's find a comfortable seated position. So I welcome you to close your eyes, taking a moment to settle into the body. Take a deep breath through your nose, feeling the breath fill your belly. And as you exhale and the breath moves through your body, invite your breath to attend to any tension you may feel. Simply ask your body to send the breath there. Take another deep inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Let the muscles in your face relax. Exhale, release any tension in the eyes or the eyebrows. Inhale, unclench the jaw. Relax the tongue. Invite a small part into your lips. And exhale. Release the shoulders down away from the ears. Inhale and stretch the crown of the head up. Exhale and feel the weight of your body and your seat ground down. Let's take another deep breath. Holding it at the top and exhale. Feel free to release a sigh. Leaving the day behind and taking a new inhale. Now, when you're ready, open your eyes. And I thank you all for joining in that breath work with me. So, as Jen says, tonight we're reading Life is a Force, Growing Home, Reflecting on the Harrison's Fourth Major work by Paul Mankiewicz and Dorian Sagan. So, Emily, I will pass the mic over to you.
Okay, thanks, Izzy.
I can start off, Emily.
Awesome, thanks.
So just to reaffirm, if we haven't said, we've started a practice where somebody begins to read, and when that person is through, wherever that may be, we'll stop, and then whoever wants to pick up, please do. And we're inviting people to feel okay with any pauses that might occur between readings. Life is a Force, Growing Home, Reflecting on the Harrison's Force Majeure work. Life is a force. Surviving meteor impact, hot, oxygen-less Archean aeon air, shortages of food and resources, examples, hydrogen, sulfide, nitrogen, and water, evolving photosynthesis, making complex compounds at room temperature, learning through cooperation and the differential reproduction of natural selection and death to tolerate its own deadly wastes. It was a complex geological force long before any reasonable definition of man. Long ago, life left monuments and scars of its overpopulating ways in the fossil record. Uranium oxides and rust, the result of the first and greatest pollution crisis, when free oxygen levels rose, not a few parts per million, like carbon dioxide in the present atmosphere, but 20%, from under 1% to 200,000 parts per million, or about 20% where it has stood since the Archean aeon. Life is a force. The dominant life form in the Archean was already a community structure informed and resilient building. inconspicuously appearing as rounded rocks, extant to this day in remote places like Shark's Bay, Australia. Layered structures called stromatolites still grow in shallow, salty waters. 3 billion years before urban humans spread like dots on a planetary Petri plate, earth-changing green bacteria began living on top of each other, slipping out of their polysaccharide sheaths, creating food and shelter for other life forms. Making rounded rocks as they slid toward the sun. With such skyscrapers built billions of years back, we can see that urban humanity is a modern variation of an ancient theme. As the stromatolite example shows, crowded life is nothing new, but it works better in biodiverse recycling collectives. The deadly Archean oxygen rise, life hadn't evolved to use oxygen yet, was due ironically to the wastes of green technology, that of cyanobacteria finding a way to plunder the hydrogen of water for use as an electron donor during photosynthesis. Life, itself 70% water, was already living in water. But at that time, oxygen was a globally reactive gas that would have singed, burned, and even killed most surface life forms with its free radicals. Oxidizing, however, is now largely under life's control. For example, in the deployment of free radicals to shape your embryo and to destroy cancers by apoptosis, programmed cell death. And of course, now we, partial progeny of microbes that evolved to tolerate and then use the gas, breathe oxygen. As in the eco art recommendations of the Harrisons, a crisis turned opportunity.
Life has shaken off at least 5 mass extinctions to come raging back. The sixth extinction, fomented by humans, was preceded by the Cretaceous, which killed the last of the dinosaurs and allowed the mammals, now free of such super predators, to venture forth in daytime. The Harrison's position on mass extinctions is that if 200 to 300 million years remain before the sun's slowly increasing temperature makes most life on Earth impossible, nature then has several 50 million year periods to evolve a learning or wisdom behavior taking place in some future version of human civilization, relentlessly tuned to the way nature has learned to use energy. To mature, we need to understand life's energetics. Only a fool picks a fight with the ocean, the Harrisons say. Although it is often said that life violates entropy associated with disorder, the opposite is true. Complex life necessarily produces waste from using free energy. Because energy flows, cascades through the body of life, it produces entropy. Most of this outflow takes the form of heat, but unlike urban humanity, land plants produce it without imperiling their sensitive surfaces. In a science engaging way that recalls in an ecological space the dual artistic scientific engagements of Leonardo da Vinci and Buckminster Fuller, the Harrisons looked to non-equilibrium thermodynamics, making good use of the terms dissipative structures and entropy. Thermodynamically, life is a member of a class of natural complex systems called dissipative structures, ornate self-similar processes that cycle gases, liquids, solids, and chemical reactions in regions of energy flow, from cyclones to stromatolites. Measurements of ecosystems, as well non-living complex systems, show that they in fact produce more entropy than less organized regions of matter. Entropy, a measure of the spread of energy, is increased by life and especially by biodiverse ecosystems. But producing too much heat near the surface, which we now see at a scale that can be considered global thermodynamic dysfunction, imperils entropy producing systems themselves.
Like beach-loving humanity, life has long loved edges, lush surfaces of co-evolving symbionts, plants, animals, fungi, and microbes, ably detox and provide free energy to be utilized, used but not used up, by life's mixed forms. At the edges, life does its best work. There, flows of heat, nutrients, and minerals become embodied in roots and rhizospheres, reefs, branches, and leaves of corals and shrubs, grasses, seaweeds, and trees, structuring flows of matter and energy. The Harrisons argue for a new form of governance in which the human race as a whole is treated as a biome, an ecotone, in which human behavior functions as a biospheric exchange, as opposed to behaving as an exotic, consuming other biomes they choose to exploit. In 1849, hundreds of thousands, drawn by dreams of gleaming gold, made their way to San Francisco. Now, in the 21st century, a green dream beckons. Unlike the Spanish explorers, driven by the lure of relatively passive gold, this time the city on the bay promises a much more interactive and ultimately valuable hope. Can we not only enrich ourselves, but also make a bet that improves our own livelihood while making the whole of nature richer, better? Some would say that civilization, such as it is, owes that much to Mother Earth. Native Americans of the Northeast did exactly this, with mosaics of moving agriculture, fires opening understories to shrub and herb growth. Gathering, hunting, they became conservators of an even richer biodiversity in the richest temperate landscape on Earth.
With global warming and sea level rise, we set in motion forces now poised to create hundreds of square kilometers of fringing marshes, perhaps the most productive ecological matrices on Earth. As oceans become 1 to 3 meters deeper, 1.5 meter tides will come to surge even farther inland. San Francisco Bay will flow through the San Pablo and inland, pushing an epic continental sea into the lowest lying hollows of the Central Valley. The Harrison's Bays of San Francisco work proposes that a 3 meter ocean rise would generate a 162,000 hectare, highly productive estuarial lagoon in the low-lying areas of the Central Valley of California. They suggest that human cultural practices could enrich and diversify new habitat for life in and around these waters as they flow into our future. As ocean levels climb just meters, hundreds of square kilometers of the Central Valley will flood an ever-expanding lagoon, salt and freshwater marshes, filling in the edges, carrying the most productively exuberant of the planet's natural systems inland. We're a fringing marsh to cover just a tenth of this area. It would be on the scale of the landfill created around New York City, but the biodiverse reverse, enhancing life's ecosystemic edge making rather than truncating it from the wetlands that were filled in and around the city to straighten the coasts of Manhattan, the Bronx, and Brooklyn, not to mention the runaways of the LaGuardia and Kennedy that were made at the cost of cordgrass and oyster reef.
To the economic question of opportunity cost, the simple answer is that we know of no better way of carbon capture or wildlife creation than nature's evolved edge making. With 305 meters of freshwater marsh or cordgrass running upland along each linear meter surrounding the new Central Valley Bay, we'd see biomass production of 1,000 tons per year along each kilometer of shoreline, adding tens of tons to fishery and shell fishery in the process. A bane could become a boon as a long blinkered humanity, too long butting heads with nature, instead tends to it with understanding hands, turning an expected 160 kilometers of shoreline from flooded Central Valley into one of the most productive polycultures on Earth. Just as Newton and Helen Harrison's first work entitled Making Earth, done some 45 years ago, found that sand, clay, sewage sludge, animal manure, and leaf litter could, with microbial action, make sweet-smelling, strawberry-feeding earth. So the transformed bays of San Francisco could help inaugurate a new relationship of Homo sapiens to its home planet. Could something like a living shoreline of San Francisco program be initiated even before the water arrives? The Harrison suggests this as a form of proactive eco art. Can we prepare, shine a light into the shadow of warming climates and sea level rise cast by our industrial economy? It is possible. Oyster reefs in front of just 1/10 of the shoreline to come will create 30,000 square meters of protection along 80 linear kilometers of shoreline, the buffer and leading edge of an imagined future agricultural landscape. Future artists and engineers, postmodern landscapers of neo waterways are needed for us to adjust the sea level rise. Attuned to the power of images, the Harrisons create Peninsula Europe Part 1. A lean, dragonish icon reflecting lands that remain elevated despite sea rise. Rising sea will bring water to new landscapes. crafting new peninsulas, outcroppings, productive shoals, and habitat where land meets water. In Peninsula Europe, Part 4, they make a proposal to reshape as much as 1 million square kilometers of drought-impacted farmland into water retention landscapes to mediate the impact on civilization of extreme drought. Moreover, the Harrisons have taken the legal term force majeure and framed it ecologically, referring to accelerated global warming produced by the vast industrial processes of extraction and CO2 production.
This is an act of Gaia, if we may say. Rising waters and temperatures will not be stopped by humans, but we can meet nature halfway. At regional and global scales, the former island of Georges Bank is still one of the greatest fisheries in the North Atlantic. So too, when the Central Valley fills, structures and features in place there would invite seaweeds, seagrasses, oyster and or mussel beds, even corals or mangroves. New York City is a center for 9 million people, about the same population as San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. New York City produces 19,500 tons of waste concrete, brick, and glass each and every day, the equivalent of wave break habitat 3 meters wide by 1.5 meters high, running 3 kilometers in length. In 100 days, concentric rings of islands could be made along the whole 320-kilometer periphery of this emerging island sea. If the Romans grew oysters 2,000 years ago by spreading shells used by larvae as substrate in the shallows of the Mediterranean, if the Fordhams of City Island made their fishery sustainable in the 1830s at the edge of what is now the Bronx by dumping oyster shells back near their harvest sites in a human discovery similar to agriculture, serendipitously started by the dropping of seeds. Why should 22nd century people with their backs to the climate wall let such an artful opportunity elude them? What happens on the land as sea levels and temperatures rise? Continuing loss of productivity and biodiversity under the hard press of human footprint, concrete, asphalt, and expansive sprawl, impasse, rapid runoff, desertification, and urban heat islands wherever industrial human beings call home. But are there other options?
Sim van der Ren showed, now 4 decades back, that by amazing coincidence, the quantity of nutrients leaving wastewater treatment plants in Los Angeles equals that coming into the households of Greater Los Angeles in the form of produce and food from the Central Valley. The parity of nutrients in and out is no coincidence. This central feature of nature is an example of mass balance. Inputs and outputs are perennially found to be equal. And if there is one irreversible, stunning move of life over these 3,000 million years of history, it has been to put a creative twist on material flows. In living systems, from organisms to ecologies to the biosphere, and Gaia herself, material flows curve back on themselves, turn in circles, transforming outputs into inputs for the next season's growth, successional stages, generations. Material cycles have a simple cause. Stuff on this planet is limited. Among the elements is phosphorus, most especially, but also sulfur, magnesium, potassium, and many others, from macronutrients to trace minerals. Just looking at such a fact of nature, one would infer that if life has a purpose, it would be to capture and dissipate energy, cycling materials in the process, or perhaps at this late stage in the game, vice versa. To stay alive by cycling matter and capturing and dissipating energy to do so. How do we keep or even enhance the biodiversity and ecological productivity of a mosaic of landscapes in a warming world with variable rainfall? Ecological systems are remarkably adaptable, but only where the flow of diversity through migration between changing environments is built in as habitat connectivity. Apex or top predators, often with expansive ranges, play major roles in optimizing, even maximizing diversity, facilitating energy flow. The reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone brought prairie grasses back to life around streams and water bodies. The wolf pack that crossed Lake Superior to Isle Royale ended the periodic devegetation by its moose population. Lynx live in a national park in Warsaw. Bobcat and cougar prowl within Austin, Texas city limits. The nuclear disaster at Chernobyl created perhaps the greatest enhancement of biodiversity in Europe since the Black Death. The Little Ice Age opened the land to reforestation and the return of wildlife and major predators, including those most social of beings who have kept us company for thousands of years. The canids, the dogs of our houses, and the wolves who have helped to keep nature whole. We too are predators and have gotten a little out of control. It is time to reintegrate ourselves into the more baroque, edgy, biodiverse cycles of nature.
The great spurs to evolutionary thinking were the fantastic biodiversity of the archipelagos of the Galapagos, which inspired Charles Darwin, and Malaysia, Alfred Russel Wallace. As Robert MacArthur and Edward Osborne Wilson showed in 1967, population islands connected by corridors established diversity through an equilibrium of immigration and extinction. Their message to the future can be found in today's Natural Community Conservation Plan in California and the California Essential Habitat Connectivity Project. But human-built infrastructure and settlement have, of late, imposed impassable barriers to movement of plants and animals. With human capacity for habitat destruction carried out on a huge scale, and with restoration done only in patches, with spare to absent connectivities, we have institutionalized a formula that seems to guarantee us a place on the decay curve of both biodiversity and ecosystem growth and development. Local losses virtually guarantee that populations will disappear in certain places. If not replaced by immigration from neighboring populations, biodiversity diminishes, and with it, the health of ecosystems.
Two thermodynamic sides to this are worth noting. The greater the length of diverse edges and area of surfaces, landscapes, and water features, the more niches for species. The more energy captured and moved into biomass, the more free energy dissipated, the greater capacity to do the work of building living form, capturing and cycling more material, directing, driving more energy through these living bodies and their byproducts, capturing, holding, and processing more water, producing more entropy. The Harrisons take up this issue in the Leipzig brown coal park work, where they contemplate a several kilometer long edge of a brown coal excavation that was becoming a lake in order to increase biodiversity. The second thermodynamic boon comes from elevating shoots, branches, and leaves into the fluid atmosphere to capture sunlight and carbon dioxide. In this vertical lift, land plants can process or move 100 times more heat, but mainly as water vapor, thereby cooling the surface in the process. Integrating flows of water and radiation, terrestrial plants dramatically drop the body temperature of the world around them. When water is scarce, leaves work as black body radiators, running temperatures higher than ambient, bubbling off excess heat like convection ovens, re-radiating energy in proportion to the fourth power of their absolute temperature, T4. But supplied with water, plant communities move 3 or 4 times more energy as latent heat, with 580 calories extracted from the system with each gram of water evapotranspired.
The architecture of cities has produced the urban heat island, sometimes killing hundreds of inhabitants in a single brutal heat wave. The living architecture of plant cover with water, however, every day reverses thermal loads. Cooling marshes, meadows, forests, vine-covered buildings, and plant-covered roofs represent an inviolable green technology older than man. Every 125 liters of water evaporated over such surfaces each day does the work of a ton of air conditioning, contributing 84 kilowatt hours of cooling. Just 6 millimeters of plant-based vaporization over a hectare during the equivalent work of 15 tons of dynamite each day, cooling the surroundings for all inhabitants. With or without us, life is a force. But for us to live in the long term in the biosphere that spawned us and the ecosystems that sustain us, we need to study and implement nature's long evolved means of energy use, waste recycling, and biodiversity generation. To change the quality of the day, that is the highest of the arts, wrote Henry David Thoreau. But in this book, The Time of Force Majeure, counterforces are on the horizon. The Harrisons propose to change the quality, not just of the day, but of centuries. Mix the old with the new, countenanced T.S. Eliot and the Harrisons do, going forward by returning to the past, not in a simple regression, but rather in the evolution's own way, according to ecologic, returning but at a higher level, involving more species, advocating ways, thankfully, to include our own. Intelligent, aesthetic ways working with nature rather than fighting it, including, if necessary, climate change. Instead of trying to lord it over nature, trying to figure out what she's doing and then helping her do it, expanding the cycles, working with, rather than against the sum of species that support us. The Harrisons show the way, promoting a new eco-ethic and aesthetic and architectonic poetics, one that looks to the past, to the heat-resistant Pliocene plants, to the Gabrielino Indians and the other indigenous cultures, whose mythology and iconography seem to encode, like a gift to the future, still pertinent secrets of ecosystems, metastability. Reading the Harrisons' work, ethic, and experience, refusing jobs that don't relate to ecology, paralleling social connections on a global basis, recruiting scientists from multiple disciplines, one is reminded of life's own successful strategies for building and maintaining ecosystems by partnering diverse life forms. Instead of destroying the topsoil by irrigating rivers to feed monocrops, we need to protect the natural alchemy of topsoil, creating polycultures. Nature doesn't help those who help themselves so much as it helps those who help others and themselves. We are cellularly already collaborative, equal artworks, billions of years in the making. Following the Harrisons, or striking out on our own, we may not be able to return to the Harrison past, but by studying it, we can grow home.
Thank you, everyone, for reading. I'm just going to queue up the next section. Izzy, did you have, or Lauren, did you have a note about which part of this we're going to read?
This is a poem. This is a way to that Helen and Newton have taken some of the ideas that Paul Mankiewicz and Dorian Sagan are writing about, specifically about entropy and the laws of thermodynamics, and really put it in the poetic voice. And I know Newton's here tonight, which is a great pleasure, and I'm wondering if he wants to read his poem. And I also...
Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Newt.
Amazing. I'm stuck with a phone that doesn't work too well, but I will answer any question anybody has, but I don't think I can read that.
Okay. Would I also have queued up the performance that Helen did in Reno where she reads this? Would you like to hear that, or would that be too much for you tonight?
Listen, Helen is not too much to take.
Okay.
In our whole history, neither of us was too much to take of the other, but almost. So
Okay.
I'm happy to hear this.
Okay, well, why don't we then, I was going to play the video of her reading this poem of yours, and the text will be up for everybody to enjoy. Can we do that, Emily?
I think that Jen has the material to play of Helen.
Cool.
I do. I'm gonna put it on for everybody to see right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
I want to say something.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's just continue.
Okay.
I'm completely touched.
Okay.
Can everyone see the
Yes.
screen? Okay. I'm gonna press play and just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. I want to make sure.
And are you going to go to full screen, Jen?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
You still see it?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, here we go.
Is reflecting on the laws of the conservation of energy and applying them to the exploitation we have of ecosystems. Matter and energy can be transformed from one form to another. Matter energy can neither be created nor destroyed. When matter energy is transformed from one form to another, there is a net loss of available energy. This loss is called entropy. A system has been transformed and thus lost energy, moves towards higher entropy then. A system that has all its energies intact is a low entropy ecosystem. If a forest in a watershed is clear cut, all the energies in the wood are transformed and dispersed. The energies within the topsoil, that is, the energies embedded in the earth-dependent habitats, supporting the majority of multiplicity of lives, are a consequence of erosion and are dispersed. The entropy of the watershed can be increased by the reversal of these energies. Since the energies so dispersed cannot be retrieved, what then, watershed? What then can we do?
Wow. I lost everybody.
We're here. We can hear you.
We're here and we're sending you a big embrace.
Okay. Is what I'd like to do is answer questions. The fundamental thing that they were writing about is that is thermodynamics from their point of view, because they've taken a point of view of physics. But there are other ways to look at this that are very plain spoken. For instance, did you read the little poem that Helen and I wrote about watersheds?
Not yet.
I can. Okay, that tells it all. How about I read that?
Oh yes, please.
But I'm hunting it down in my book now, so you got to be patient.
No problem. Take all the time in the world. Zoom is free.
Oh, hold on, I got to get there. This is a fat book, you know. Weighs 7.5 pounds. I'm a little embarrassed by it.
Dollars by the pound.
Come on, Dave. Trying to find the damn thing. There's two things I want to read. One of them is refers to what they're talking about. And it comes out of the last chapter of the force majeure introduction. Can I read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Helen and I, when we say for life to continue, we mean whole systems continuing. Lowering entropy within living systems turns out to require the elimination or transformation of all economic systems based on exploitation and their regeneration into systems of exchange. With that understanding, the work that we have done so far, even if successful, would be open to exploitation as long as business as usual remains unchanged. It's in this context our whole body of work would not be enough. So that now let me talk about that a bit, because it really changed me and Helen. Once we understood that we had done the reverse of nature with our culture. We had built a system of extraction where we took from nature, but we didn't give back. We took from the life web, but didn't give back. Whereas all things that live and continue in the web of life, all niche, all system, all other life lives in niches, and niches are mutually supporting. And we're just not going to make it unless we find the way for ourselves to behave collectively as a niche. I haven't been able to find the damn poem I want to read, so I'm going to talk about it. Hold it. Let me see. I'm going to try once more. Okay, I can't find it, but it's about trees. I'd like you all to imagine a watershed that's not so big. Maybe it's 10, 15 miles square. And there's a stream running through it, a river. It starts with the mountains on top and then slowly gets stronger and turns into a little river. And then there's a valley. And the valley is very productive because it's full of topsoil that is washed off the mountains over ages. Well, now a company buys the watershed. And the watershed has 150-year-old trees in it or more. Well, a 150-year-old Sitka spruce or redwood runs about, maybe 150 foot long, tall. Maybe you can build about a couple hundred houses out of it. So each of these trees is worth about $10,000, maybe 15 after harvesting and processing. And there are about, maybe 70 or 80 of these type trees per acre. So if it's a 10-mile watershed and there are 640 acres in a mile, we have 6,400 acres. Now, 6,400 acres yielding up 50 trees an acre at 20 to 30,000 a tree comes to lots of millions of dollars. I once calculated, I think it was 120, 130 million. A very happy company harvests it all. A very unhappy watershed lives with it or tries to, but the watershed can no longer live the way it once did. The trees are not taking in carbon and producing oxygen. The topsoil is not growing from the loss of leaves and the nematodes and whatever in the topsoil that are helping the Sitka spruce grow. And so with the cutting of the trees, erosion happens. With erosion, coming down, it screws up the topsoil in the bottom. Meanwhile, the trees guarded the river from too much sun, and many species were adapted there. They all die. Well, now, the equation that needs to be developed and understood by all and everybody is the transfer of energy from one form to another is a net loss. Therefore, the transfer of energy of all those trees into 137 billion, 500 million, 500,000, or whatever it was, that amount of energy in the money does not equal, is much less than the amount of energy lost when you subtracted it by cutting all the trees. The oxygen, the nitrogen, the topsoil, the trees themselves, all the species in them, the brown bear, the wolf, the spotted deer, the spotted owl. I mean, the list is incredible, the loss. So then you would think that's enough. Not enough. Why? Well, you've transferred the energy from one form to another. You have a net loss thermodynamically. That's what the article on us you were reading. That's not enough, though, because the company now builds, like 30 or 40,000 houses from all these trees, or maybe 20,000, I didn't count. But the transfer of energy from money into the houses is also a net loss. So when we have 8 billion people, all needy, all contributing to taking, if you're a very poor person in India, your taking is so modest that it's almost invisible, but you're not giving back yet. If you are a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, then your taking is outrageous. It's not outrageous because you became a billionaire, like who was the head of the New York mayor, who was like he's got $58 billion. Think of it. $1 billion is $1,000 million. So he has $58,000 million transferred out of the energy of the planet. How can he transfer it back? I remember him making a statement, I'm going to give it all back. I don't think so. I don't think you can. You see, I don't think it's givable because of the damage done by its acquisition. So what we have to do is find, if we're going to continue, what we have to do is find a way to turn ourselves inside out so that we become like either a mega niche or a multitude of mini niches spread across the planet. And all of us are helping life as life is helping us. So that's the name of this game. And it's a hard thing to do because of what I would call, I don't know, what happens in a system that doesn't want to change. The inertia. There are inertial properties in natural systems. So a natural forest wants to continue. Well, a billionaire wants to continue also. So maybe 58 billion is not enough. The big companies are heading to be trillions. My next door neighbor, Joshua, walked in one day and he said, "You know who's going to run the world from now on?" I said, "Who do you think?" He said, "The guy who's running Tesla. He's already got the third or fourth richest person in the world. If you put all those billions together, it's damn near what a big country would be." So we have to get right our thermodynamics. That's what these guys are talking about. But he does not say how. He says what. And we have to start getting into how can we do this? Well, one of the hows about it is if we reduce the demand, there will be an automatic improvement. What would reduce the demand most? Well, population reduction. If we chose to reduce our population dramatically, I figured out one calculation was that if we only had, like the Chinese tried to do, if you had one child, a woman, why we wouldn't have replacement. And at the end of 50 years, we'd have cut our population in half. So I don't think I don't know what's possible. But what I suspect is will happen is disease will cause problems like this. The activity of disease is causing infertility, particularly in men. But also women are understanding how hard it is and dangerous it is to have a child. So statistics are showing a reduction of population in almost all in European and civilized countries, in wealthy countries. It's not enough. It's too little, and we're too late. So our next work, which I'd like you to read, and I'm going to send Lauren a copy of, and I'll ask her to distribute it, is a work called Helenstown. I did a new version, Lauren, and I want to send it to you. It's going to be published in the Liverpool Biennale shortly, in their catalog as a chapter. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes.
Very well.
Okay. Okay, good. I just never know. And so what I'm going to do is send Lauren a copy and ask her to distribute it to you. And then I'd like to make a discussion on it. Helenstown, which is in honor of guess who, she's 2.5 years gone, and I still channel her a little bit. Every once in a while, her voice comes into my head and says, "You're not going to like this." She'll say, "Newton, you're about to fuck up, back off." Things of that sort. We were very blunt with each other, Helen and I. That's why I think we were reasonably successful. And so what I want to do is send this to you, and then I'd like to have a discussion. Helenstown does something. Asking myself, we asked ourselves, what's the most extreme thing we can do? And we came up with a weird notion. We called it preemptive planning. And we said, well, what happens if we plan backward from an overheated planet? Let's plan backward from 75 years from now when we suspect the temperatures will not raise 3 degrees, but we're certain it's going to raise about 6. At least all the paleobotanists we talked to and our own research shows that. Well, most stuff is going to die where it is. Lots of stuff has to move in and change. The whole world is going to have to, all the human race and many species are going to have to move northward. Our next work is the Siberian Plain because that's where I think bicontinental movements will take place. But what Helenstown does and Helenstown says is, how would a 20,000 person grouping live in this new world? What would they need? The principal thing that small villages will need in a
Now we lost ya.
Muted.
Muted yourself, Newt. Hi.
You're right there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you when you talked about what would the population of Helenstown need?
Okay, that says done speaking. I'm not done speaking.
Please don't be done. Keep going.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The idea of Helenstown was this. Much like the pre-literate people who were slash and burn or small communities, they would live with the resources in their community until they used the resources up, left a sort of deserted place, which was everything eaten. They'd move 50 miles away, but a couple hundred years later, or even 50 years later, the place they left, which was fertilized by their feces and all that stuff, was biodiverse again and richer than when they left.
Lost you again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The issue here is then, what do you have to have in such a community to live well? Where can we, is there wealth in the absence of money? Well, there sure was, because nature overproduced. And when nature overproduces, that's the wealth of the community Hellenstown has invented. And it requires about a 10,000 acre wilderness forest, about 1,000 or so acres of farm, and a couple thousand acres of herd land. And all together, that not only feeds the group of 20,000 people we calculated, but it has enough overproduction for that group to go trade with another group for whatever they have that the former group or Hellenstown doesn't have. So that's the kind of thing I wanted to discuss with you and see if we can't collectively invent our future. So, am I still there?
You are. And
So
now we can open it up for discussion while you're here, if you like.
Sure.
Okay. So just to get us back into our bodies, that so we can think for a minute about
Yep.
all that you shared about. We'll hand it over to Izzy, who is our resident helper to get us back focused, and then we will have a discussion. Izzy, you want to
Okay,
take?
so if I defocused anybody, apologies.
You gave us a great big butterfly kiss of a hug. We're thrilled.
Okay, kid.
We're thrilled.
Well,
to
I'm talking to my favorite human, so I'm happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So usually at the end of each week, we read a poem. This week, I wanted to incorporate the poem into the breath work. So this poem I will be reading, I wrote myself. I assembled it by using the words found in the essay we just read. So finding a comfortable seat, please close your eyes and inhale. Letting your breath wash over your body, exhale. Feel yourself ground down. Now, as I read, please stay as you are, continuing breathing at any rhythm that feels best for your body. And just let your mind drift as you listen to my words. Fluid self in the mosaic. Slipping out of the dream landscape, evapotranspired beings into the world they flow, into the architecture of cycling matter, embodied in roots and sanable death. They breathe in ambient patches, expanding mosaics of resilient life, finding a way into the co-evolving embryo of the future, which cascades through the now, bubbling off waste in crowded life and rhizospheres curved back, consuming the ancient understories that flow through terrestrial scars. An excavation of oxidizing bodies, layered, dead, dissipating energy. A vertical lift beckons estuarial wisdom to capture circles into sunlight, transforming outputs into inputs. Adaptable fungi and microbes invite us home, a radical variation of community, an apex of connectivity, returning but at a higher level. Lush mythology tends to collective timescales, and the raging power of hope. Now, feel free to open up your eyes if you close your eyes. And I will, just because it's kind of like an embroidery, the way that this type of assemblage was made, I'll share it with you all. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Just cut out words and then piece them together, which is really fun to do because it kind of limits you. But yeah, I also had to do a little reference to Anna Singh, if you've been with us for the microbes, and then the hope of Soulknit. Yes, and then pass it to Emily to read the guidelines.
Thank you. Let me just pull them up. Sorry, Izzy, but do you have the guidelines handy? Or Jen, do you?
In the chat bar, do you want to read them?
Yeah, that'd be great. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh my goodness, you got the poem on. I'm reading it.
Okay, here are our guidelines for our discussion that I can share with you about our intention here tonight. We are not experts, but inspired generalists, and we invite you to join us on the road of becoming more fluent in some of the challenging ideas of our times. We will hold each other's best interests at heart. We hope everyone has come to the table to learn, grow, and share. Let's all share responsibility for including all voices in the discussion. Let's try to stay focused on the reading and how it makes us feel. We welcome those of you whose minds are bursting with tangential ideas to write them in the chat bar. In the unlikely event that a disagreement arises, we take this as an opportunity to expand our knowledge rather than defend a position. By staying on this Zoom call, you are agreeing to these community guidelines for our discussion period. Thank you.
Emily. I know that there's already a lot to discuss with Mr. Harrison sharing so much with us to discuss tonight. I did write some questions kind of for this week before, so I could just briefly share that. So I wanted to point to a part of the text that we read on the evolution of the relationship between most surface life and oxygen, especially because we do focus so much on breath work and also suffocation with the theme of this reading group. So the paragraph reads, did the deadly Archean oxygen rise, life hadn't evolved to use oxygen yet, was due, ironically, to the wastes of green technology, that of cyanobacteria finding a way to plunder the hydrogen of water for use as an electron donor during photosynthesis. Life itself, 70% water, was already living in water. But at the time, oxygen was a globally reactive gas that would have singed, burned, and even killed most surface life forms with its free radicals. Oxidizing, however, is now largely under life's control. For example, in the deployment of free radicals to shape your embryo and to destroy cancers by apoptosis, programmed cell death. And of course, now we are partial progeny of microbes that evolved to tolerate and then use the gas, breathe oxygen. As in the eco art recommendations of the Harrisons, a crisis turned opportunity. So last week we discussed dialectics, if you were here with us, specifically with biogeosynosis as a dialectic between abiotic factors and biotic factors, synthesizing into biogeosynosis. So first of all, there here in this paragraph, there seems to be a dialectical relationship between oxygen and life. And it's pretty extraordinary that oxygen, like sunshine, is an abiotic factor, technically not alive, but contributes to the sustaining of life. So here we see the biogeosynosis dialectic of an abiotic factor, oxygen, and a biotic factor, most surface life, kind of coming into play. And at first it was a deadly relationship, as the text reads. At first it was deadly. It wanted to destroy each other, just like we were talking about with the Hegelian dialectic, trying to, negate. But eventually it evolved, it developed, it synthesized to become a relationship of, co-development and a wonderful relationship of breath, or as the text writes, a crisis turned opportunity. So there's a lot to unpack there. I just wanted to point to that section, like I said, because our theme of the reading group is suffocation, and we breathe a lot together. So I felt that was a relevant section of the text to point to. And I will open the floor back up to discussion.
Thanks, Susie.
Hi, this is Sarah. I've been thinking a lot about the edges piece that was reoccurring in the text, and it's something that we discuss a lot in sort of regular parlance in business of like finding your edge. And I did a lot of development real estate work in communities, and we would often be talking about edges in terms of transitional neighborhoods, the edge of something affluent, and the beginning of a neighborhood that was historically not affluent. And in permaculture terms, that edge is where the most biodiversity is. And all this foment that happens. And it makes me think about the other piece. I don't know if it was in the text or just when your guest was speaking, but Mr. Harrison, but the idea of the edges of our countries and nation states, and how climate change is going to be driving such intense migration in the next 20 years. And just these idea, like, you have these really intense populations, displaced populations on the edges of countries, where a lot of different cultures are coming together. And it's sort of like a dense human definition of two nation states failing in terms of global warming. So just seems like a really rich metaphor around the collapse of the nation state, and then where all those cultures are coming together at the edges to survive. There's such a rich opportunity to think about that niche concept in those edges as a place of innovation and survival and necessity. Also, I'm embroidered for the first time. I don't know if you can see my bird. I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is really great. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Get it a bit closer to the camera.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. I love
great.
that outline.
Well, that's the most basic stitch, right? The backward stitch. So I'm starting something simple.
Work.
Can I enter? Can I say something?
Please do, Newt.
I, as I listened to that, I had a sudden memory back to when I was at Yale and studying the Albers color course and teaching it. And you know, color interacts at the edge, but acts by amount. And I think that the argument about edge relationships needs to be enlarged because they are formed by the amount of stuff on either side. When you teach drawing, yeah, I actually am an artist, you know. When you actually teach drawing, if you make a line, let's say you make a big wiggle on a rice paper that's 2 feet by 3, and it's a quick charcoal gesture. Well, you have made 3 forms: the line and the form on either side of the line that the line makes. And I think we can maybe think if that is something repeatable in the biological world that sneaks into our perception. That is, your eyes, your eyes and your whole perceptual apparatus takes up about 50 to 60% of your visual cortex, a whole lot of your brain. And that's something we also got to think about. And so therefore, that's why we work with our eyes so much. And so when you're talking about edge relationships, I think they reverberate in ways that are almost invisible to us. And I was so happy to start seeing them in nature because I was blind to it myself till about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in while you were talking, Newt, because um, I was thinking about the vibrational quality of color and edge, and the idea of the edge of landscapes, where the two come together, being greater than the sum of either part, and this whole like idea that we were studying last week of the dialectic, where you have two things coming together, getting subsumed to create another entity. And it made me think about you know, some of the vibrational abstraction like that of Rothko, where you would sort of feel the edge of those colors just kind of merging both out of itself and into an other, and that other is almost like that mysterious other which can't be defined, which you can't really put your finger on.
All true.
Yeah, color theory, I think, has a lot, you know, Newton and Helen's uh, work, although it's taking on, you know, vast swaths of land, is part of a tradition of field works, really. And he's often talked to me about this idea of field works coming from his knowledge of color theory and abstraction, and how you create a sense of space through a color field dynamic. But if you think about this idea of edges um, in landscapes becoming re-enchanted, um, by allowing, for example, to utilize the metaphor of the work that we're doing along the LA River, to trying to figure out how to allow the floodplain of the unbridled river to become a floodplain again, even within the contemporary infrastructure of the city. It's a way of building a new edge, of allowing that vibrational field of possibility to emerge through this kind of new edge condition, both in section and in plan.
Uh-huh. True. You know, that's the original discourse on edges has to do with life itself forming in the ocean, and all these little chemicals all had boundaries, and they kept bumping into one another and interacting and changing by the bumping into. And so I think this, what happens at the edge, is spoken about much and understood too little.
Conversation is also peripherally reminding me of a text of Timothy Morton, and I don't remember what text it was in, maybe Humankind, but he talks about how life and kind of, he refers to it as the symbiotic real, which I guess could be another way to understand the energy behind biogeosynosis, but that it's
Well, yeah. Oh, you're going to use the Russian term.
Yes, we were discussing it last week, biogeosynosis.
Yeah, we just to sort of fill everybody in, we were reading the text last week that Newton sent me uh, in order to understand the relationship between biogeosynosis and one of his new works, which is just been published, called Vastlands. And so Newton, everybody, not everybody here, because the group changes weekly, but a lot of people here are familiar with the term biogeocoinosis, which again is about this kind of mysterious coming together through language of bio, life, geo, land, coinosis, commons. So life, land, commons put together, being a way to think about the distant past, as Mankiewicz and Sagan say about the Harrisons, as well as this future we need to co-invent together. What is the commons, and how can it benefit life, um, and how do we treat and steward the land to promote both the commons and life? What is our role in that as artists, as thinkers, as makers, as living beings?
Well, we're all on the path of discovery where that's concerned.
Yeah, and I mean, what you had said a little bit earlier about the edges, it reminded me of this author, Timothy Morton, and what he talks about, the symbiotic real, and this idea that life is like a perforated bag of water inside another perforated bag of water inside another perforated bag of water. And something you said about the ocean and the edges in the ocean kind of reminded me of that, where yes, the edges are where the complexity is, but it's also where that kind of, as you were saying, Lauren, the sublation or the synthesis is as well. And yeah, it also reminds me of Singh talking about, like, you know, the kind of landscapes of fungi and the way that they wrap themselves rhizomatically around the roots, like this interconnectivity of edges that are fluid, but also complex. It's kind of a recurring theme in our readings.
Wow. I'm going to have to check out soon, but I'm open to a couple questions before I go.
I have a question, Newton. Could you explain to us your idea of continuum that
Yes.
you have in the Vastlands?
Okay. It begins with my disagreement with the term sustainability. Sustainability, from a point of view of the laws of physics, is impossible because everything is in a state of change and movement. So that the issue here for all of us is not sustainability, which is really associated with the core of capitalism. What we have to do is reorganize the way we form thoughts in order to only think, or mostly think, in terms of continuities. So when I look at a forest, I'm not saying, how can I keep my forest? I'm saying, how can you continue, Mr. Forest? And the forest says back to me, well, young fella, it being 150 years old and I only being 88, it says, well, young fella, the way we think about that is it's getting warmer. So make it easy make a corridor of some kind so that trees that like warmth can move across whatever they have to move across and join here as we're going to die from too much heat and things of that sort. So I try to give a voice. I imagine that I'm talking to the forest and the forest is talking to me and it's telling me what for, and it's telling me how I'm screwing it up. One time, for instance, as I'm listening to this and imagining designing a pathway from the George Washington Bridge to Lake Champlain. You didn't know about that one, did you, Lauren? Well, so there I am designing this pathway. And what do? I come to the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal separates the Adirondacks and the Catskills. The Adirondacks go back all the way up to Lake Champlain. But how do we get across? How do I get trees across the valley and across the Erie Canal? And so to do that, I propose like a mile-wide corridor that you do nothing to. You just, that mile-wide corridor, yeah, you can walk in it, but that's it. And I have to believe that, as it has happened in all of the history of nature, that the species that need to get from the Catskills to the Adirondacks will follow that path. And in that path, we're going to try to put the Erie Canal underwater in a canal for a while, so that things that can't cross a canal will be able to. And so we have to now begin a new level of cooperation if we're going to find a way for the continuum to continue. By continue, I mean all and everything in relationship to all and everything, and how we can join it and how we can stop breaking it up. Does that answer your question? I never know. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Whenever you're talking, I feel like you answer my questions, and then as soon as you stop talking, I'm confused again. So yes and no.
Okay, what are you confused about? Because everybody ought to be confused in this mess we're living in. Think about how hard it is to claw our way out of the mess we've made. So I think there is a continuum of life, and what we've done is separated ourselves from it in many of our activities.
Yeah.
For instance, if nature abhors a monoculture, what is a city but a monoculture? Why are we making cities? Whoops, did I make a mistake? Did I say something about cities? Is every architect going to jump on my case? You see what I'm saying? We have these funny stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's like I was telling you about that Slavoj Žižek film that Emily and I watched on about philosophy, when he imagines himself on the Titanic with Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, and they're embracing, and he gets on and he says, "Why is it that nobody talks about the role of the iceberg in this love story?" So the city.
Wow, what a nice thought.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what you're saying about the city, right? Like, I mean, you have to sort of ask yourself, like, how do we continue to accept this modality of being, and or are we already in a sense being forced into changing that at this moment? I mean, maybe we are living through that paradigm shift toward the continuum, because maybe the continuum is already lodged in our DNA as our knowledge.
Oh, I think so. I think that's an accurate insight. Um, but I think what we're doing is in our creating this sixth extinction, we're literally violating our DNA. Whoops. Are we violating our DNA? How many vote yes?
Violating the planet, and our planet's connected to the DNA, right?
That's correct. That's exactly what I was thinking. Hey, folks, I got to run.
Thank you, Newton.
Good night, Newton. Thank
Thanks.
you so much for joining.
Thank you, Newton.
Hey, you know
Thank
what?
you,
I had a good time.
Newton.
If I can, I'd like to keep joining you.
That would be
We'd
Next,
love to have you.
see you next week.
Um,
See you Sunday, Newt.
okay. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
He's so cool.
That was fun.
Oh.
It makes embroidering seem really calming and simple. All I got to do is fill this outline in.
Yeah, good point.
I loved his prompt about like discussing this issue with the trees, like getting more in dialogue with listening to the teachers of around us.
Izzy, I just wanted to just see that amazing diagram of yours one more time. Can you can you can you put that back up? That went so fast, and it's such a beautiful thing. Could we look at it again?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to share that again. Let me get it open. Okay, share screen. Yeah, I know we normally do the poems at the end, but I thought since it was adapted from the reading, it would be nice to have alongside the reading.
Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to make it? Because it felt like it felt like it felt like a way of learning without it being a linear form of learning. Like you were lifting words and reassembling them as a way of kind of assimilating it. I would just love to hear a little bit about your process.
Yeah, definitely. One of my teachers at Bard College, one of my professors, Emilio Rojas, who's a performance artist and a poet, we did these together with some different texts that we were reading in a course, and just by like cutting out the pieces and reassembling. And when I read this text, I felt drawn to do that because we're towards the end of this series. We still have a couple more weeks, but it feels like we have a good body of knowledge that we've kind of unfolded together. And I felt like this text and its language kind of encapsulated a lot of what we've worked up to. So, and it's a really poetic text in its language. I was kind of like obsessed with certain like evapotranspired. I loved that. And like, like the vertical lift, like transforming outputs into inputs. I was inspired by some of the language. So I just I reread it. I cut out all the pieces of the text the words individually, and then I piece the poem together just like a puzzle with the pieces.
I love the idea of that. I love the idea of a radical variation of community, an apex of connectivity returning, but at a higher level. It seems to sort of conjure that edge, but also there's a feeling of ascension in it.
Thank you.
We've also in this series really tried to kind of bring different styles of writing to the table, you know, and the Harrisons really, their lectures were really performative poetry, and I think they use language as a way to create visual images and edges, and Newton and Helen were master teachers in that way, you know, that they could really create through language and through the edge between the teacher and that person being taught or that group being taught, a kind of whole energetic field, which I think is also the subject of their teaching, that potentiality. I don't know if you felt that at all tonight, but for very difficult language, he always invites, you know, an honest response of like, well, I get it as long as you keep talking. But as soon as you stop talking, I don't remember what I got anymore.
That's the interesting thing with this very complex material. I felt the artist's hand inside of it. You know that it um, it was moving to feel that sensibility, and not just in asking Mr. Tree what he thought, but just the like leaving the absence of space for the ones that are going to get there, and it's there's all these quantum jumps into an artistic sensibility with the amazing amount of knowledge that he's carrying too. So it was very inspiring. It was multi-dimensional, you know, and plus that he's got like some solutions to things, so it's great.
I have a very pragmatic kind of consideration about what he said about creating this corridor and allowing the trees to get there when they get there or how they get there, in relationship to what we consider invasives. I'm just wondering if anyone has any thoughts about that, because I'm working on quite a large project right now, and everyone is incredibly concerned about invasives coming in. And I look at that as opportunity, not as a negative. So I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts about that.
I have a question. This is Arlene. Hi. Where's the project?
It's in Baja California.
And is it in an undisturbed area or an urban area?
Well, it is in an area that is being disturbed quite a bit by cattle grazing, and there are what are considered invasives there, but there are a lot of endemic plants growing in that, and it's quite a singular sort of bioregion because we have a grove of ancient oak trees and there's water there. So it's quite different than what's happening, let's say, down the road a few miles. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you'd like input, I have attended probably 20 ecological restoration conferences, and I've presented at a number of them. And so I've heard from a full range of experts. And I think in general, one of the best points of advice that I've heard is to include a restoration ecologist on the project team.
Oh, you froze. Frozen. Oh, it's just frozen. Hmm.
I'm sorry, I seem to have lost my internet connection.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, what part did you lose me?
You were suggesting a restoration, someone who could give some guidance there.
Yeah, restoration ecologist, and somebody who understands what I call coupled social ecological systems, which is a fairly sophisticated, emergent, interdisciplinary practice. But there's a sensitivity in it, as artists, one has to be sensitive, but also informed by the best science, if you will. So anyway, that's my thought for you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
There's a local artist local to LA, and he only eats invasive plants for the most part. And he does a lot of collaborations with different universities to find out what exactly those invasive plants are and where they may have come from, and some of them are really tell a very interesting story of immigration and the mobility of people at different times in California's history. So there's like some aspect of invasive species being an opportunity for as a food source that is often ignored. You know, and as an artist, you know, he does a lot of experimentation around the culinary like uses of it. So some are traditional to its origin, and then just some are just combining it into a whole new cuisine of that location. And then by eating them and harvesting them and foraging those invasive species, it allows for more room for the native species to be spread out and planted.
I guess I was just considering in regards to the continuum that Newton was speaking about, and just wondering how invasive species are sort of characters in that continuum.
I feel like it kind of brings us back. Walker, were you with us the week we read Anna Singh, The Mushroom at the End of the World?
No.
We read that, and the main point we got from that was disruption ecology.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was there. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I remembered you being there. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And how, like, you know, the area is deforested, and then the pine is able to flourish because of that deforestation. Even though that's different, it's like a disruption, like an invasive species, or like deforestation. Out of that, like something like pine is able to flourish, and then matsutake mushroom, and how everything's a character. Like even the invasive species are characters in these narratives, and sometimes important, really, really important characters too. But yeah, just the landscape narrative of Sing really reminds me of that idea.
Yeah, and also the idea of climate change and the die-off of more southern latitudes and the enhancement of northern attitudes by new species coming in. Yeah, the sort of like continuum or change or constant emergence of something new. You know, if I'm suggesting, for instance, planting something that may be invasive or considered invasive, but that is more opportunistic than what presently exists in that landscape. And I get a lot of pushback from that. Yeah, I know it's a delicate dance with that, but it's great to hear some other thoughts about it.
I think that's so interesting. It's a topic that I've drawn to again and again, both in terms of the art that I find really compelling and the reading that I've been doing. Kind of how do we define what belongs? And I went to a wonderful exhibit in Helsinki a couple years ago called Immigrant Garden, which features beautiful illustrations. There's actually also a garden that was cultivated with plants that are considered typically Finnish and actually have origins all over the world, Africa, Asia. And then there's another book I read by Richard Mabey called Weeds. And it looks at actually how some of the xenophobic cultural norms shape our naming of the plants that we consider undesirable and how that shifts over time. And so that's something as a gardener that I'm sensitive to, because there are purists who say, you know, you must use only California natives. Whereas what I'm going for is something that is drought resistant, you know, as our climate changes, you know, as our climate has shifted since I myself moved to California as a transplant, you know, not from here, my roots are not from here, but this is very much my home. And I think that as we cultivate the environment and shape the landscape, it's a really interesting question. I'd love to hear more about what plants you're using in your project and what the, you know, so-called native landscape otherwise consists of.
Well, I sort of defer to Mediterranean palettes of plants because we are living in one of the few Mediterranean climates in the world. So there's a lot to draw on from those. And some of those plants are relative to, for instance, like lupin. We have a lot of lupin where we're at. In fact, we have some lupin that I've never even seen before. Tiny little you know, 1 inch tall lupins that are white or in patches. There's so many, I guess, yeah, specifically endemic plants to that little bioregion that I have not seen before. But, you know, there are lupins in southern or northern Africa that don't exist here, but I want to introduce those into the landscape. One, because they're, of course, drought tolerant, but they're also edible. So things like that, just sort of looking at, I guess, mostly more Mediterranean plants and adding them into a native landscape. Not in a restoration, but we're doing a large landscaping job as well. But also we're looking at it's a 2,000 hectare property, and we're looking at restorative practices there. But all of this comes up in my mind, working on the land there. It's like, you know, are these invasive species actually beneficial here, and which ones are not? And there's a lot of conversation about that, about introducing things or eradicating things. Or I feel like the ones that are surviving there after all the fires are coming back now are the, you know, they have the opportunity. But then I see people chopping down all of the tobacco plants, you know, things that are apparently invasive there. And I just wonder, like, maybe they have a purpose in that landscape too. So I was really fascinated by this tree corridor that Newton was speaking about.
I'd like to share a perspective kind of relating to some of the work that has been done at Metabolic on that, which is kind of at large sort of a cop out, sort of, it depends which way you go, but we've worked with and discovered that tree tobacco, which you just referenced, is actually an excellent remediator of lead, for example, in a landscape that's highly toxic. But we've also taken steps to, you know, kind of respect what it does, especially as something, one of the few things that can return to a brownfield and begin the process of remediation, and taken steps to, you know, trim its, you know, flowers so the seed doesn't spread as much and things like that. So I think there's a sensitivity to that, especially when you're looking at really desecrated landscapes, not just from climate change and lack of water, but from pollution. And also on the other side, you know, I can't help but think about the live coastal oak and the sort of crisis that it's going through with the polyphagous shothole borer, which is perpetuated by castor beans. And so, you know, things like that are clearly, you know, if we were to lose all of our oak groves in Southern California, that would be detrimental. So I think there's absolutely a line to walk within based on context and, you know, just sort of the situation, and just being knowledgeable and open to what the land is asking for, and also being responsible stewards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Would anyone like to share what they've been working on? I made some progress. I've got some green in my leaves.
Oh, wow,
I'm very
Jen, that's
excited about.
beautiful.
Ooh.
That softness.
I'm really excited about this. I think I'm gonna save the bird for last. I'm gonna work my way in.
I love the black eye. That works really well.
Thank you.
And here's my sunflower. I made progress on all the petals tonight.
Wow, you sure did.
Look at that.
No,
Oh
it's
my
almost
gosh.
done.
Yeah, it
Wow.
really is.
Here's my crow who started breathing out this shiny purple thread.
Ooh, wow.
Wait, could you raise
That's
it higher,
cool.
Walker? I didn't see it. Oh my God.
So cool.
I got this
It sounds so
I got
beautiful.
this beautiful sparkly thread in my package. It's very exciting.
This is Laura. I've been on the phone and I've been having this experience of increased auditory perception based on being on the phone. That's been really amazing. And it's been really fun. I have to go, but it's been great being with you all in this way. And I will see you and hear you very soon again.
Bye, Laura.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Have a good
Night.
weekend. Yeah.
This is where I got with my raven so far. Right.
Oh, wow.
I'm not seeing it.
Whoa.
Closer. Let me pin it
Oh,
and see.
nice. Very
Ooh.
nice.
Yeah.
Hey, how
Looks
come
like
I'm not seeing it?
What?
Oh, there it is. I wasn't seeing you. Awesome.
That looks like fun.
It was fun.
Thank you all.
Good night,
That was
Walker. Great to see you.
You
Good
too. That
night.
was wonderful.
Goodbye,
Thanks a
Walker.
lot. Bye bye.
All right. Oh,
Hey, Bob. Oh my God. Hi, sweetie.
Hi, June.
Hi, June.
Say hello.
Hi, Juniper.
Hello.
Juniper in space.
How are you feeling, Juniper?
Yeah.
What's your final check?
Yes.
Is that your trick? It's a good trick, June.
Nice
That's
job.
a nice trick.
Want to see another trick?
Yeah.
What's this trick, June?
Wow. Verse.
That's fantastic.
I love it.
Very good trick, June.
Great job, June.
Great job.
Want to see another trick?
Yes. Wow.
Good job.
Yay.
Where'd you go, June? You go too far away. I don't even know if this is working. Come on, girl.
Thank you, June. June's in Newton's Forest. Pretty soon I'm going to get naked and run around my room.
It's gotten to be that time.
It looks like fun.
It's a daily thing. I can't get her to wear clothes.
Another trick, Mama. Want to see a trick,
Oh, she's the best.
She's a lot of fun. I should probably go spend some time with her.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful discussion. Thanks for everything. This has been great.
It was really nice. Thank
Yeah.
you for being here.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night, Aaron.
Good night.
Thanks for the coda.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Good night, everyone. Good to see you.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Good night, Marisha. Thanks for reading.
All right. Well, that was intense. I did not expect Newton to come.
That was so funny.
Oh my God, I had such stage fright, you know. We had a really good time. I was really worried about playing Helen's performance because, you know, that's intense. That was the last public performance she ever did. So that was just, I think, 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seemed like he had a really good time.
He did. I think he had I think he felt really uplifted to, as you know, bunch of us sitting around on a Friday night reading about him.
Yeah.
That's a really,
It was
uplifting.
a treat.
It's a compliment.
That was a really uplifting experience, and to have a brilliant young person like Izzy then take it a step farther. And how was that for you? You did great.
Well, I didn't expect that either. So I was like, I really have to talk about this, but thank you. It was really fun.
I can't imagine how that must have made him feel. I'm sure it made him feel like he received a huge gift because what you did was spectacular.
Yeah.
So, but you also did it really elegantly, and that was not an easy thing to do. So, hats off to you.
Because also, like, every week I invite people and they say they're going to come and they never do. But this week my cousin came.
Nice.
A little bit nervous already. So I had.
Oh my God! Well, it was a good week for them because you always shine bright, but that was a tough thing. That was a definitely, like, I was like, oh wow, I'm glad I'm not in Izzy's shoes tonight.
Thanks for the
But you did great.
Yeah.
And I loved that piece. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so special. Yeah, just what an event the whole evening was.
Yeah. God.
It's really fun to play with text that way. Especially
It really is.
Writer's block helps.
But it's also like, you know, of a visual piece as well, you know, taking language and making it a visual art made me think about the poem that you shared with us 2 sessions ago. I forgot the name of the poem, but I remember the drawing so well.
John Poulet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that kind of visual manifestation. And I think last week your notes on the page as well, even though might have been a little bit hard to read for people, I really thought the exploration of that on Zoom, the Zoom screen share with these big sort of bold X's of things we weren't going to read, and
super meta,
chaotic but fun.
That was really visually interesting.
Yeah, Zoom is to like new types of sharing that in person aren't necessarily accessible in the same way. It's cool.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about the trace, the visual trace, the auditory trace of these moments of community that we're in for this moment of suspended time. We don't know what's next, and we don't know what's like. It was a year ago this week that we had our last makerspace at Metabolic. So yesterday, a year ago, was our last makerspace since COVID. So when you think about that, like, who knows where we'll be a year from now? Like, we don't know. But this is that's a weird sort of like life in a bottle, like a ship in a bottle, where like all of these things were bringing the handmade and the hand annotated into this bottle of Zoom. There's something there. There's something very unique in this moment that I think it's only going to be later that we really um, understand. But I'm really appreciating that in this series, that whole meta layer of the hand in the text and the visual page and the reading and the slowness and the carefulness of leaving space for somebody to join in and keep going. You know, there's these awkward moments where you're just kind of like, oh, what if nobody reads it? But it's okay, you know?
Yeah, and it's really growing. I feel like people's like we're growing the muscle of how to do that and how to handle the silence, and it's really cool how it's grown into this kind of like an ensemble, although
Yeah,
different people every time.
yeah.
Also, Lauren, tonight when you were reading, I was like, I could really listen to Lauren reading audiobooks.
Oh, thank you. I think that I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks,
Rubbing.
and you know, I as Newton likes to remind me, because I speak with him every Sunday, you know, even though you have learning disability, you know, he always likes to remind me, for somebody with learning disabilities, I'm doing well, you know. But I I have I have an auditory and visual way of learning, you know, so reading out loud and reading slowly and looking at a page is really important to me as a way of assimilating um, knowledge. And so thank you for sharing that with me. There is a kind of, I think you always have, I find that I always want to read as slowly as is possible without losing the thread, because it takes me a minute to actually savor. It's like people who know how to eat really slowly really impress me, because I can see that they have a whole the whole thing going on, the whole chewing and taste and all of that. So I'm kind of feeling that with a lot of these books that we're choosing. Emily and I have been spending quite a lot of time reading out loud
Oh yeah.
to each other, you know, as a way to even imagine how it will sound, you know, like when we read, even if it's not us reading, certain things read really well out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And even figuring out how to read out loud something that's hard to read, like last week's reading.
Yeah.
Hard to read, but I really wanted to read that because Newton sent it to me. And I always figure like, okay, you know, I have to go, I have to really try and if he mails this to me, I got to really try and understand this. But, you know, it really helped me really nail down that bio-geo-coenosis that like rolls right off my tongue now. Like When it was just biocenosis, I was really struggling with it. But the biogeocoenosis and the saying it over and over again, now the idea is really sticking with me and gluing itself to all kinds of other things.
It's an adhesive term.
It is. I mean, what I tried to lob to Newton tonight, which he didn't answer, he went off on his own poetry tangent, was that in his poem about the vast land, he essentially reinvents the word biogeocoenosis and calls it the continuum. So he lifted the biogeocoenosis concept from that article he sent me and uses it in his own writing as the word continuum because he doesn't think anybody will understand biogeocoenosis. So I think that continuum for him in the vast land is about transforming Siberian forests into agriculture land makes sense politically, economically in the now, but it doesn't make sense when you think about the continuum because it takes so many millions of years to create those forests. And within those forests, you have so many stacked layers of life. So, what seems smart to do if you're interested in the body politic of controlling the world is he wants to advocate for a continuum. So I was hoping he would talk talk about that, but at least I got that from him is that it's possible to lift an idea like biogeocoenosis and change the word so that it can be communicated to others. I find continuum a little bit like a different word. So I can't connect those two ideas. So I was hoping that he would kind of jump on the Izzy's prompt of biogeocoenosis. And I think it's good that you keep going back to these ideas of the dialectic too, because that's another really tough idea. And the kind of way you outline the biogeocoenosis and the dialectic, I see those diagrams, and that I think about those things. So I think I think you're a really really good teacher, Izzy. I'm learning a lot from you.
Oh my gosh, you're really embarrassing me, but thank you.
I don't mean to. It's just the way it is. Some people are good at it. Some people, like Roxanne, is a great teacher with breath and many other things I learned from her. But we all learn from each other. But it's nice when you have that ability, to take ideas that are really complicated and not make them simple, but make them so that you can attach to them. You know what I mean? Because once you can attach to them, then you can kind of make them your own.
Yeah,
But it may take a little bit of time. All right. Speaking of time, I'm sure everybody needs to go eat their evening meal.
That was so wonderful tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Beautiful,
for being here, Roxanne.
beautiful
Thank
faces.
you.
Nice to see you.
See you later.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Night.
And that embroidery really dances on that black background. It really works. That's a tough one to see, and I really enjoyed looking at that one tonight.
It is beautiful. It's Cascade's mom's.
Yeah, did she notice that?
I told her.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I mean, and it is like, I mean, I know I say this all the time, but the stitches are perfect. I mean, I marvel at this detail. I mean, and then look at the back again. It's just, it's like, it's so clean.
It's really amazing.
I have embroidery goals.
Wow, it's got like the mountain range and everything.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it's really cool.
It's special.
I need one of those little lamps that you good embroidery people have.
Oh, I just got it at Barnes and Noble. It makes a world of difference.
I know, because I was like using my candle to try to see. I couldn't see very well.
I can't embroider without it.
Night,
Good night.
Good night.
Have a great weekend.
Enjoy the valley.
Night.
Thanks. Coming back tomorrow. I had a wonderful time.
Good, good.
Bye.
Night.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you later.